I think it's the most powerful tool that we are creating in the history of humanity. The further that I went down that rabbit hole, the more excited I got, but also the more terrified I got of realizing that we just have a handful of companies that are controlling this future. And it's really social media all over again, where we have we had a few companies with this extremely powerful network that have control over it and you have used it in nefarious ways.
Huge moves in the crypto space. Bitcoin's down 7% this week as of Wednesday afternoon ahead of Jackson Hole symposium. And we're looking at the altcoin space as well. Ethereum's had a huge run. What's next for stablecoin adoption and what's next for the emerging of blockchain technology with AI? We'll be talking about all of these themes with our next guest, Karia Samaroo, founder of Wonderfy at XCEO and now CEO of xTao, the first publicly traded Bittensor company. It's good to see you, Karia. I've had you on my last show a couple years ago, so it's good to reconnect. You're now the CEO of a new company, and you have a new name. So new things for all of us.
Great to be back. Great to see you again.
Let's start by talking about Bitcoin, and then I want to talk about xTao. What is Bittensor? What is xTao? And what does this mean for everybody interested in not just crypto, but investing overall? Bitcoin just hit a record high above $124,000, but it's dropped 7% this week ahead of Fed Chair Powell's speech on Friday. Now, you've been very vocal about Bitcoin's recent rally. Let's break down some of these factors driving Bitcoin to new highs. And it's not just Bitcoin, by the way, a bunch of other alts as well.
Yeah, sure. So I just think there's been so much that's happened this year, really centered around clarity from the US and a lot of steps that have been taken, administration really following through on promises that were made around digital assets. And so we, recently had Crypto Week several weeks ago, where some of this legislation was kind of, actually put forward and taken to the next stage. And so I think it's just really, we're seeing so much clarity after so many years of uncertainty around the regulation of crypto assets, Bitcoin, stablecoins, et cetera. And then at the same time, we're seeing this wave of digital asset treasury companies that are bringing in crypto into the public markets in a huge way. And so there's this kind of confluence of factors that has led to this huge rally this year.
Let me just show you some charts of other things that have moved. Like I mentioned in my introduction, Ethereum had a huge move. This is the ETH chart, ETH to USD, a bit of a pullback since mid-August. Now, Again, is this the same narrative here? Because Bitcoin's been moving ahead of Ethereum. In fact, Bitcoin's been leading Ethereum basically for most of the year until we've had this huge rally starting in July. What happened here to ETH and the alt space?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that the alts are, we're not in alt season yet. I think Bitcoin has definitely been leading the charge. And you mentioned the pullback that's happened, I think, 7-8% from the 124K high. That was after the US inflation reports came back in higher than what was previously forecasted. And so I think that, that always has an impact on risk assets like Bitcoin. But I do think that the pullback is really being seen as more of a consolidation phase rather than us going into a reversal. So there's much more to come in this market. But with ETH and with different alts, I think that there's still a lot of room to grow in this cycle. And I think we're just getting started right now.
Well, what are some of the major themes that are going to be continuing to drive Bitcoin adoption and alt adoption throughout the rest of the year? Regulatory changes have already happened. They'll continue to happen, but most of that is now expected. What else is new?
Yeah, on the Bitcoin side, the treasury companies, I think just in general, we've seen tens of billions of dollars being raised by crypto treasury companies. Most of that is concentrated in Bitcoin because it is the leading asset. And for a lot of those companies, they have not necessarily executed their purchases of Bitcoin. So it just comes back to supply and demand. And there is a fixed number of Bitcoin, and we just keep seeing more and more demand coming in through the creation of these vehicles. That's just really the initial capital raises for these vehicles. When they're public, their mandate is go out and tap capital markets, debt markets, bond markets, and buy more Bitcoin. And then because that's been so successful for MicroStrategy and it has been the best performing stock, in the last several years, year after year, other crypto assets are following suit, ETH, Solana, and then other altcoins and using this strategy. So I do think that that's a key piece aside from the regulatory side, which you said and kind of alluded to earlier, which really just allows more institutions to play. They have a much higher degree of comfort with playing with these crypto assets, and then retail will follow.
Does this not present more of a risk profile or a higher risk profile for Bitcoin, considering that now a lot of Bitcoins are going to be dominated by a few companies that are going to be the majority of Bitcoins going forward? Doesn't that provide concentration risk to the market?
I think there is some concentration risk there. It does seem like there will be sort of a cap for most of the Bitcoin treasury companies in terms of how much Bitcoin they can actually buy. So I think there'll be sort of a natural cap for these as they get to that size. It definitely does concentrate things a little bit more, but I think in general it's positive because it just creates a better access point for investors that don't or can't hold crypto directly. So, there's thousands and, millions and millions of shareholders that hold stock in these companies. So while it is one company, they have a very distributed shareholder base. And so I see that as a positive.
With these regulatory changes, what changes are we seeing from the consumer adoption side, and particularly on-ramping consumers or new users? Are exchanges now looking for new opportunities and perhaps exploring new ways to be competitive with on-ramping? Any changes there?
Yeah, I think everybody's just trying to get more people into the crypto ecosystem. So exchanges are looking at being able to bring in users through products that might be more traditionally on the TradFi side, or trying to blend those products. We're hearing the narrative of GameFi coming back up, which was really prevalent in 2021, 2022. And we haven't seen much since then. And now it's kind of, sparking up again. I think Telegram through the TON token and Telegram games and apps that they're using is a huge on-ramp for retail and just kind of consumer users into crypto. And I would say that's probably the leading kind of on-ramp really right now. I think that's been really impressive to see, a billion users, and they just kind of keep making crypto more accessible through their app.
Do you think Bitcoin is top for the year? That's a question I've been getting at pretty much every single dinner party I've attended this summer.
I would say no. I think there's room to grow for sure from here.
Okay. Based on what?
I think there's still more. I keep going back to the treasury companies. I think there's a lot more demand that is pent up, and I think just generally it seems like it's in a consolidation phase right now, and with some of the regulatory changes that have come, I don't think we've necessarily seen all of the results of that yet in the market.
This came in from the Secretary of the Treasury, Scott Bessent. Stablecoins represent a revolution in digital finance, he said, published July 18th. The dollar now has an internet-native payment rail that is fast, frictionless, and free of middlemen. This groundbreaking technology will buttress the dollar's status as the global reserve currency, expand access to the dollar economy for billions across the globe, and lead to a surge in demand for U.S. treasuries. Now, I'm just wondering whether or not, first of all, do you agree with that statement? And second, if that is going to be true, I wonder if that provides a headwind to Bitcoin. Bitcoiners have long positioned themselves as one of the anti-dollar assets, along with gold and other things. And so if there's going to be more demand for dollars on the blockchain, in other words, stablecoins, and more demand for treasuries, does that necessarily mean less demand for Bitcoin? I'll let you evaluate this.
Yeah, I would say no. I think they're complementary in the sense that Bitcoin won't take over the global money supply and replace all money, all fiat currency. I think it's something that will continue to grow, and I think it's at sort of 2% of global money supply now, and certainly is going to continue to grow. But I do see, I'm a believer that both assets will continue to exist, and so that means that people that hold Bitcoin are still going to need to interact with the traditional financial system in some way. And that's why stablecoins have grown so much in the last, 4 years or so. I think they're around $150 billion market cap now, and or don't quote me on it, but I think sort of $4 to $5 billion in 2021, or maybe it was something around there. So it's just continues to grow, and so I think it's really complementary to the growth of Bitcoin and other crypto assets.
Well, you've been an entrepreneur in the Bitcoin, the crypto and DeFi spaces for quite some time now. What trends are you capitalizing now on? So, I know you're a CEO of xTao. We'll talk about that. But let's say if you were to start from scratch, if you were to build another company, what would you capitalize on?
Yeah, so I just went through this exercise after WonderFi. I took some time off and was starting to explore what is next, and couldn't help but go down the AI rabbit hole and got extremely excited about the potential of AI. I think it's the most powerful tool that we are creating in the history of humanity, and it's really exciting. So that certainly is the area of focus, and for me, the further that I went down that rabbit hole, the more excited I got, but also the more terrified I got of realizing that we just have a handful of companies that are controlling this future, and it's really social media all over again, where we have we had a few companies with this extremely powerful network that have control over it and and you have used it in nefarious ways. And now this is something that is far more powerful and ever present than social media. And again, it's a few companies that control it. So the problem that I've chose to focus on is AI, and through researching this problem, I came across Bittensor, which is a decentralized AI network that I think will solve the problem of centralized AI.
What exactly is decentralized AI? What does that mean?
So Bittensor or decentralized AI is what OpenAI was supposed to be. So the original mission of OpenAI was ensure that AGI benefits all of humanity. And what's happened is OpenAI pivoted from being a nonprofit that is focused on this mission to being a for-profit centralized company and concentrating all this power within the organization. And so decentralized AI is really, the goal is to build a future where AI is something that anyone can participate in and contribute to, and it's not gate kept by one or two or three organizations. And just to kind of ground that a bit, if you think about how reliant people are on ChatGPT now, and the models are only getting better and better, OpenAI gets to decide what goes into those models, how they're trained, how they make decisions, and then they can also cut off access to it, to you, to me, to certain countries, organizations, etc. And so that's a huge problem. Again, I think it's social media all over again, but much more powerful in the sense of how powerful AI is as a tool.
Okay, so how is Bittensor fundamentally different, like functionally different? So if I'm using ChatGPT, the more I prompt it a certain way, the more I'm training my ChatGPT model to start behaving a certain way. So it's decentralized in that aspect. How is what you're talking about going to be different? So
it's basically with Bittensor, what you're doing is you are So I guess to take a step back. So yeah. Bittensor is, so I would say Bitcoin has created the world's largest supercomputer by a huge factor. So it's proven that decentralized networks and compute can scale faster than anything that is centralized. And the Bitcoin computer really is solving math puzzles, and that's the way that mining works on the Bitcoin network. And so Bittensor has taken that structure of Bitcoin, it's taken the same economics as Bitcoin, and it's applying it to building this AI supercomputer. And that is one that anyone can use and anyone can contribute to. So it doesn't have the censorship and bias issues that ChatGPT has, for example. And the way that the network works is when you send, so for example, there are ChatGPT style apps that are built on Bittensor. And when you're using that, instead of it going to a model that OpenAI has created, which is siloed and nobody can, see or understand what is happening, it's going to the Bittensor network and it's getting sent to hundreds of different miners that are all contributing open source AI models to solve the problem in the most effective way. And then the network is scoring the outputs and then and ranking them. And the most effective, or the most high quality output is getting shared with the user. So it's that's the decentralized and open source nature. And so there's a lot of implications for that, but really one is that anyone can contribute. So with OpenAI, you need to be working for that company to be able to contribute to the model. And with Bittensor, anyone that has that expertise can connect to the network, build a model, train a model, and then get paid for doing that through the Bittensor network. So it's really created this massive supercomputer, which is growing really exponentially, and creating this open network that anyone can contribute their expertise to, and then can access the outputs from.
Let's talk about how AI and blockchain have been integrated so far up to date. Are we seeing any integration so far between these two technologies?
Yeah, I think there are several different crypto AI or blockchain AI projects, and they're doing everything from inference to data collection to more consumer-facing AI applications. And so we see a variety of different networks that are crypto networks that are doing that. Bittensor is really I would say the most prominent and the only network that is addressing all of those problems. And so the vision behind it was this really kind of interconnected network where all of these AI problems are being solved, and it's each different subnetwork on Bittensor can access and share data amongst itself. So it's kind of a simple comparison would be the internet, but I think that this is doing something similar, but really focused on AI and machine learning.
But ultimately, why do we care about the centralization of AI? I mean, what's worst case scenario if we don't change anything right now?
I mean, the worst case scenario is that. So I think the likely scenario is that AI is the most powerful tool that humanity has ever created. So it's something that has the ability, fast forward 5 or 10 years, it's going to be something that has the ability to control and influence people in ways that we, can't foresee yet. There's scenarios where it, replaces a vast majority of working class jobs and white collar jobs, et cetera. And so that, to me, that is something that should be owned and controlled by the populace, not by one or two companies, because it certainly will be used in nefarious ways if that is the case. And so I think the decentralized aspect is so important. It just goes back to why Bitcoin is important. Bitcoin is important because it is something that has a fixed supply, can't be inflated, and isn't controlled by one country or one bank or one company. And that's why it continues to grow, because people can know and trust that there will never be more Bitcoin created, and it's not going to ever get shut down. And so when you take that structure and you apply it to AI, the same concept applies. This is something that is always going to be open and decentralized. Anyone can contribute to it and access it, and it's not going to get shut down. And those are really kind of the core pieces of why decentralized AI is so important.
Okay, so what is xTao and how does this fit in?
So xTao is a public company that's solely focused on Bittensor. So we're the first publicly traded company focused on this asset. We hold a lot of Tau, which is the token of Bittensor, and then we run validators on the network. So as we've talked about, I think that Bittensor and decentralized AI really is one of the most important things going on right now. And so we're working to grow Bittensor, make it more accessible to the investing public, and really take on a MicroStrategy-esque approach of being able to tap into capital markets and raise more money, accumulate more TAO, and grow our validators and our infrastructure so that we can grow this decentralized AI network.
Okay. How can you tell us more about how the token works? And, tell us about governance, tell us about the structure, tell us about how many tokens are in circulation, ownership, so on and so forth.
Yeah, so structurally, it's very similar to Bitcoin. So there's 21 million tokens that will ever be created, and it follows a similar halving cycle to Bitcoin. So, the first Bitcoin halving was 2012. We're pre-first halving for Bittensor. So the first halving is supposed to be happening sort of the end of this year, start of like maybe January of 2026. So that sort of gives you some context around where we're at in the evolution of Bittensor. But yeah, similar. So very, very similar structure to Bitcoin. It was also fair launched in a similar way to Bitcoin. So I think the problem with a lot of crypto assets is that there are huge allocations for founders and for early investors, and it just sort of follows that stepwise approach. Whereas Bittensor, the network was launched. Anyone that holds the token either contributed work to the network by providing AI services or by validating AI services, or they bought the token, on the open market. And so I think that is a really critical point as well. It's why a lot of people have come into the Bittensor ecosystem because aside from solving this massive problem, it's also something that is fair and philosophically aligned with Bitcoin. And that's really the structure. And then there's hundreds of subnets on Bittensor. Each subnet is focused on a specific AI problem, whether it's data related or inference or so on and so forth. And so all of those subnets are competing with each other. And then miners on all of the subnets are competing to bring the best performance to the consumers that are utilizing those products. And it's really just this open competition that is happening in real time, and the most productive players are getting rewarded, and the ones that aren't are getting kicked off the network. So it's creating this loop of developing these extremely high quality AI products through using Bitcoin style incentives, but applying it to AI.
Right. How many shares do the founders, well, not shares, but how many of the remaining float do the founders own?
Of Bittensor? So what I have heard is that the founders had around a 1% allocation of TAO. I can't confirm that, but that's what I've heard, which is drastically different than I think every single crypto project that I'm aware of other than Bitcoin.
Okay. And can you comment on whether or not Bitcoin and the broader crypto markets have had an impact on the price movement?
Yeah, I would say that Bittensor and TAO are so early, and I don't think that there hasn't been that much price movement in this cycle so far. Really, the network had an upgrade in February called Dynamic TAO, which is this really kind of critical upgrade, and I think the network's still, adopting and integrating that change. So I think in terms of sort of price action, we haven't really seen that. But I think the way that I look at Bittensor is like I look at Bitcoin relative to the total supply of money, and the number that I'm aware that I've calculated is it's around 2% of global money supply, the market cap of Bitcoin. And so I think the parallel for Bittensor is, Bitcoin is this, digital form of money. Bittensor is really focused around intelligence, and that's the coordinating input for all economic activity. And so in my views, GDP is really it's the measurement of all human economic production. And then AI, we're seeing, is able to mediate and optimize and generate production. And so as AI grows, that GDP is really going to be the only meaningful benchmark for something like Bittensor, which is focused around this decentralized AI network. And so I think the addressable market for Bittensor is so huge. I do think its global GDP is the relevant one, and we're at such a small fraction of that. Bittensor is a $3.5 billion market cap currently, and just as a comparison, OpenAI is valued at 300 billion, and so I think there's a lot of room to grow, and my expectation is that Bittensor follows the likes of Bitcoin and gets to a significant percentage of its TAM in the next few years.
Okay, I'm curious to see how the decentralization of AI is going to evolve in the future. Practically speaking, what does that mean for users of AI?
For users of AI, it shouldn't make any difference. The interface is the same. Just on a day-to-day basis, the interface is the same, and you shouldn't really know. Like in my views, as Bittensor grows and people are using it more, they might not even necessarily know that they're using it. They're using a front end that looks similar to, for example, ChatGPT, but it is using the Bittensor network and does not have all of the kind of privacy and centralization concerns that OpenAI has, and that's generally what I see that looking like. But it's just something also that would allow users to have access regardless of whether ChatGPT or OpenAI is deciding to give you an account, for example. So similar to Bitcoin, anyone can buy and hold Bitcoin, but if you want to hold US dollars, you need to get onboarded and approved by a bank. Let's
end it here. Thank you very much. I keep calling you Ben in my head. It's Karia now. Congrats on your new venture. Where can we go to follow you and follow your work and learn more from you?
Yeah, you can check us out at xTao.co, and that's probably the best place to go from here.
Okay, good. We'll put the link down below, so make sure to follow xTao and Karia's work there. Appreciate it. Thank you for coming on the show. Take care.
Thanks, David.
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.